One of the objectives of this course is to empower developers to be able to create useful applications which leverage the exciting power of the Cardano blockchain using Mesh, which is a library which makes this a lot easier. However, it's easy sometimes when people start to get distracted by all these new blockchain concepts and forget that the important thing is that we're making applications for users. So that means we can reuse many of the tools and things we've learned to create these Web 2 applications. In fact, that's what we're doing here. So we're leaning on a library, which is extremely popular, the React library, which has a whole bunch of tools and functions which make it easy to create user interfaces and user interface components. Now, we're not going to teach the basics of React here, but I've just listed a few concepts which it's worth making sure that you're a little bit familiar with. There'll also be some links to some resources you can check up on to make sure that you're ready to proceed with the rest of the course. First of all, what is React? Well, as I said, it's a library which makes it easy to create UI and UI components. UI and UI components are obviously the way that our users can interact with our applications. So very important that we can get that done quite easily. Now, a few other concepts related to this. JavaScript is the programming language which React is utilizing. It's important to understand this. It has a sort of big brother TypeScript, which is just a typed version, nothing to be scared about there. Components, we've just talked about these reusable elements. What's interesting is they render something called JSX, which is a syntax extension for HTML, which looks a lot like HTML. So we can kind of think of this like HTML. There's a few small differences, but we can basically use JavaScript and mix it in. You can actually just learn it along with React. It's quite easy. An important idea is the fact that we can maintain state, in other words, values in the components so they can remember things about themselves. And another important concept is the idea of props. And these properties are actually arguments that we can send to these components so that, for instance, we might like them to render in a different way or to look in a different way. There's also a concept of hooks, which are simply functions which somehow leverage this state of the component. In fact, one of the simplest hooks is called useState. Finally, we're using a framework called Next.js. It's definitely not the only React framework, but it's one that's particularly popular. And what it does is does some of the config and some of the puts a whole bunch of tooling to make it easier. So what I've done is they have a very simple demo. Well, I've taken out most of the code, but I just wanted to show you. So it says here, it's got a main. This is the main function. This is my main component, as it turns out. And I've made an example component. And here I'm sending it this prop, which is the title. Then if I look at the source code for that, which I've put in a folder called components, then you can see that I'm importing some of these hooks from React. I just basically have a simple counter, which I'm using the state. So I'm going to remember what value the counter is. And I have a handler for this, which just responds to a mouse click. And the other thing is that this property, which is I'm sort of decomposing here, is just being used in components. So it's very, very simple. And you should be able to understand this quite easily if you're ready to proceed with the course. It looks like this, and I can update the counter. So there I'm using many of the important basic concepts here: component, hooks, props, and so on. So make sure that you understand those things before we continue with the rest of the course, and we'll include some useful links and tips below.